This episode contains discussions of trauma, violence, and difficult life experiences. Colorful language not excluded. Listener discretion is advised. I'm Elizabeth Porter. After 20 years working as a lawyer with families, abuse, and mental health, I'm done ignoring the patterns. It's time for hard conversations that build awareness, create compassion, and change lives. Welcome to Law and Porter.
I had $300 in the bank and a mortgage and a car note, utilities, all of the bills. Mathematically, I didn't know how that was going to work out. It was physically very hard. I remember being the cleaning lady at night and being spoken to at times like the cleaning lady in these offices, medical clinics, the jail, and how invisible I was. And it's true. The people you come across, you don't know who they are and what their life is, because the same person who might look through me with a mop in my hand at 9 o'clock at night may have to call me tomorrow to ensure they're home. And I can do both. And I'm going to do my best to do them both very well.
Okay, Sarah. So tell us a little bit. Tell me your name. Tell everyone else your name. And tell me a little bit about who you are today.
My name is Sara Hathorn. I live in Petal, work in Hattiesburg. Life looks pretty boring and suburban today. I am married to my best friend. We, have predictable mornings and evenings. We get up at 6 a.m. and the biggest drama is what flavor of muffin my kid wants me to make. I worry about, have they had enough fruits and vegetables, and are their school uniforms ironed? And, we fight through car line, and I've usually lived an entire life by the time I get to work in the morning.
If you're worried about ironing, then you're like at the pinnacle of parenting, because
Absolutely.
I'm just making sure I get the good polyester that doesn't wrinkle.
Right.
So that sounds like you're exactly the good kind of boring.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so it feels like fight or flight the entire time, like it matters more than anything in the world. And then I work all day. I work through lunch a lot. My phone rings all day long with people who, need help, and I am able to help them. And I'm totally in the zone. Of course, that comes with a lot of working mom guilt. And then by evenings, we have extracurriculars, we have Girl Scouts, we have church obligations. And
so today looks like this stage of your life is like a normal momming in the trenches stage.
Absolutely.
But it wasn't always so picture perfect, right?
Wasn't. Mm-mm.
So, and I can say, as someone who's known you for many years and sees you now in the professional world, you do always look like you have it together. I mean, I've asked you, like, what are you using for this? What are you using for that? Because on the outside looking in, I mean, it's like, I want to be her. She must have a really good planner.
Funny?
She must have the right person, planner, and pens, because her life looks perfectly put together. But I think that what a lot of us, we've worked so hard to get to where we are, and people think we had it easy. But tell me about the day when when things were not that easy. What was that like?
Well, I met you in a particularly tough time, and I'll never forget you and Allison at your office.
You didn't prepare me for this part. You weren't going to... Okay, keep going.
I'll never forget it. I came there as just someone scared and broke who needed help and didn't know what to do, because I was in a situation that I couldn't imagine. And so I'd gotten your name from a friend, another woman, and I showed up, and I was almost too embarrassed to stay, because you and Allison were just gorgeous and put together, and you knew what to do. And I remember thinking I had to look like the biggest screw up to you two. So as much as I'm continually surprised to hear people say that about me, I don't argue with it, because I have been in that position so many times, and I have now lived enough life for that to come back around, and for those same people who I never thought I would be like to tell me that they think I'm put together.
I gave you the Kleenex. You didn't prepare me for this part. So tell me about that stage. Tell me about, I think it was about 10 years ago when I don't want to say the rebuilding. Actually, let's go back a little bit further. I want you to tell me about what it was like for you growing up and what you thought your life was supposed to look like. You know, when you hit 20, 25, what was that projected for you that you grew up with, that came from your family, your community? Who was Sara supposed to be from that?
So it was a very conservative upbringing, very blue collar, very religious. And it gave me a foundation and an expectation of stability and an understanding of what I wanted my children to grow up in, from the standpoint of living in the same house, not moving around constantly, knowing that, you know, their parents would be home at night. You know, kind of the Family Matters Full House version was not what I grew up around, and that was the dream that seemed incredibly unattainable. My parents both grew up what we call Dolly Parton poor, extreme poverty. And, you know, I'm the first person, or the first generation, my sibling and I, that we haven't picked cotton. We don't know what that's like. We haven't skipped meals or gone hungry. That wasn't a part of our childhood experience. But the proximity of that was so close that it colored how I was raised, and the feeling that that was never more than 2 paychecks away. And, you know, I had many cousins and friends who their parents were in drug addiction, terrible financial straits. Certainly, my mother had to, you know, beg the Mississippi Power man not to cut off the power growing up. And, you know, I remember thinking that she just didn't like to eat dinner, because I never saw her eat the dinner she cooked until I was in middle school. And looking back on it, she waited until we were in bed to eat what was left.
So you grew up seeing a mom of sacrifice and of putting others before herself.
Absolutely.
And of doing what she had to do to get the power on and everyone fed. And so what did that teach you? And actually, what was the programming for what success was supposed to look like for you?
Security. And everybody having a meal when they needed it, and everybody having a ride when they needed it. You know, I remember knowing what foreclosure was and being afraid of that as a kid.
I understand it's enough to be bad. We don't want that.
And so, you know, my dad too, he was a truck driver, and, you know, then he started working offshore, and he went to every offshore school he could. By the time I was in high school, he worked literally all over the world. So, you know, he would bring back a little trinket from the Paris airport.
It was the best thing you'd ever seen, right?
Right. Even if it was probably junk, but it was, oh my gosh, this was in Paris. That's crazy. So I had the benefit of seeing where my parents came from,
right?
How close we really were to that,
right?
And then the superhuman amount of work that they were able to do to get us on the other side of it. Now, that does not create an environment of people having time for kids all of the time.
Right.
I started walking home in the 3rd grade. I tell people today that, you know, school gets canceled for bad weather. In the early 90s, they just let the walkers out early so our little legs could get us home before the tornado came. Like, I mean, we were probably the last generation of latchkey kids. And you didn't answer the door, and, you know, you cooked for yourself, and you made sure the floors were clean and the kitchen was clean before your parents got home, because they were too tired by the time they came home. And you figured out your own homework. You went to the library and read through the encyclopedias if you needed to.
So, and then college, did your parents plan or think, hey, we're going to plan for her education, she's going to go to college, she's going to be a career woman, or what were their kind of thoughts for your future?
So I'll never forget asking my parents about college savings my junior or senior year in high school, because I had heard other people's parents mention their college savings. And my parents laughed and said, college savings? What are you talking about? There's no college savings.
You have supper, but you do not have college savings, right?
Yeah.
You were the first in your first generation to go to college. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. So I had seen my mother do when I was about 12, and my dad was working offshore all of the time. She went to PRC and got her associates as an LPN. And so my brother had severe dyslexia and really struggled through school. So I remember watching her with the brother word processor that she had saved up for and bought for nursing school, battle through his homework, exhausted, and then go to the dining room table with all of those books around her and end up on the president's list.
Now we know where you got it. You didn't mention that part.
Right. I mean, my parents, and that is one thing that I really understand deeply, that just because someone is not in a corner office does not mean they are not smart enough and that they don't work hard enough. Proximity and opportunity are major factors in where people end up. So if my parents had had the opportunities and the proximity and the examples that I had, I have no doubt that they would be where I am right now.
But that's a really big, it's kind of like turning a ship. And so they had a really big ship to turn. And you can tell they were the years where they're just riding that ship. And then you end up fighting your way through college. I know that was not, you said you went to Ole Miss and everyone pictures you as like this sorority girl. And really you were like doing 12 a.m. shifts.
Yeah.
Waking up bar fights kind of thing.
Well, and, I think my mother just about grieved herself to death because the thought of her 18-year-old daughter, I moved out on my 18th birthday to go to Ole Miss. And that I could imagine that was so terrifying for her.
Was the plan kind of like, we grew up in small town, she'll get married, she'll live beside us, she'll have children, I'll get to be a grandmother? Like,
absolutely.
I don't say the country, but when you're from Mississippi, that's in the rural
traditional.
Areas, that's kind of the norm, right?
It's a highly traditional environment. And so success was, of course, making it through high school, making good grades. But, at the very most, going to college in Hattiesburg, living with my parents until I got married. The only dates I was allowed to go on in high school was to church. So the model and the expectation, and I kind of pick on my mom about it now, that, she used to always say, well, when you don't have to work, because it was
that was
always
the goal.
Yes, and so I would, remind her of, well, so Mom, I want to work and I will never not work. But that was an atypical attitude. And so that is something that I had to really grapple with, that was just not my goal. And it's not a goal that I see as the lesser option by any means. There have been many evenings of, weeping and gnashing of teeth that I could not fit into that mold. I wanted to fit into that mold and do what I was supposed to do. I am a born type A. I want to follow the rules. Right. But there was just something in me that just couldn't. And I tried. And that's where my story does kind of go off the tracks, is that I did try. Did try.
You tried to fit the mold.
I did.
Of the success being get married, work to support your spouse until you don't have to work so you can stay home and raise kids.
That's right. That's right.
And so you said, and no matter how hard, I don't say we fight, no matter how strong our opinions may be against what we're raised with, there was that little piece of you in the back of, but that this is what I'm supposed to do, right?
Right. And it doesn't really feel good.
It doesn't really fit. Doesn't feel comfortable, but I'm going to wear this.
Right.
Okay.
But it's very much, I'm wearing this.
That was harder.
For approval.
Right. Like you were working harder to fit into that role than working hard to be who you wanted to be professionally.
Yeah.
So tell me about, let's go back about 10 years to when your days didn't look so pretty. And you had gotten your degree at Ole Miss. You were on this professional trajectory, and along comes love. And it looks like, all the things in the movies that those rom-coms led us to believe.
It did.
Until it doesn't. And tell me about that process of, I've built this. I've tried to fit this mold. I've tried to fit the square peg into the round hole for so long, and figuring out what was the right fit for you at that point.
So probably the hardest learned lesson of my life was, if you build up something that you're not supposed to have, it will be blown up and it will be taken to the ground. And I remember telling somebody during this experience, God has to wrestle the wrong things out of my hands because I will not let go.
Right.
And how much harder is that?
Well, and I think, too, if you're challenge-oriented, you're like, even if it's marriage, you're like, this is so hard. Right. It doesn't matter. And so sometimes you end up chasing the wrong thing because you just need to prove to yourself you can do it.
Absolutely. And I'm the problem.
Yep.
I need to sit down and shut up. I need to take direction.
God's like, I was trying to tell you.
I tell everybody that I did a 2-year failed stint as a stay-at-home mom. And I'm not tough enough for that job. I was waiting for the washer and dryer to ding so I could have something to do and change the laundry out. I did sourdough bread pre-COVID. I made my own baby food. I made sure my daughter went to the best day program available in the town that we lived in. And then I had an entire Montessori classroom in our home because I knew I loved education and that that's what I wanted my daughter to have. And so trying to fit in to what I had at the time looked like shrinking myself and keeping any ember of who I was as something that I could do with my daughter, and to hope that she then would be the one to break the mold and get the education and not be tied to, or I guess contained in, this is the right way to do it.
Kind of like that you were sitting in the do as I say, not as I do. I'm going to teach you the right way, but I'm also going to continue to model what was modeled for me.
Absolutely. Because anything else seemed bad, and that I was making a choice not to be a good woman.
Right. Because this is what wives and mothers do. And even then, the Barbies we had, they, like we were talking about, they were receptionist Barbies.
Right.
They had either a part-time job, but they were still making their lunches for their kids. They were teachers who went home and were with their children. And we never really saw that full identity of a professional doll who also had the family.
Right.
And so you had to make a hard choice.
I did. And just to, say how ingrained that was, I have this very specific memory of receiving my Ole Miss degree in the mail, because it's a dummy degree you get at graduation. That, little folder's empty. And so they mail it to you later. And so I had worked so hard for it. And I remember thinking and saying all of the time that this 4 years is my time. And this may be all I get of something I did for me that mattered to me. And so when the degree came in the mail, my dad opened it and he meant nothing by it. But he looked at it and he goes, well, you got your MRS degree. And truly, he meant nothing by it.
Right.
It was a casual comment, And that's what Ole Miss was. That's what people saw me go and thought, oh, well, she's just trying to get her a rich man. She's just trying to marry up. That was the only possible interpretation in the paradigm that I grew up in of someone wanting to go to Ole Miss and work the midnight shift. So, yes, that was so deeply ingrained that me wanting an education and a career was just bad.
And then even after 4 years of you're saying like, no, this is what I'm doing and this is what I want. 4 years later, it was still a joke. Like
It was right.
4 years later, they still haven't gotten the picture that like, no, professionally,
Right.
it's not going to be, I'm going to be marrying up. Someone might marry up to me. You got to
Right.
accept this.
Right.
Right.
Well, and, I was a 23-year-old old maid. How bizarre.
Yeah. From small town Mississippi, you are.
Yeah. And, my friends were married with children. And I remember, so I had the fantastic good luck of graduating with a business degree in 2008.
Yeah. Fun times.
Wonderful timing.
Mm-hmm.
So, I applied for all the jobs as far as away as Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I mean, just everything to not move home. And not that home was a bad place.
You had a point to prove at this. Like
I was still in the mindset that, I'm probably going to end up back home married with kids, but at least I had this freedom for as long as I could get it.
I do actually try not to talk about myself, but this reminds me, and it reframes something that I said. One of the first people who came to sell me advertising when I first opened my law firm said, this is 2010, where do you see yourself in 5 years? I have a law degree. I'm opening my own law firm. And I told him, barefoot and pregnant with this hanging on my laundry room wall. And in retrospect, but I didn't know that you could do both. Mm-hmm. And it's still, even though I knew I didn't really want that, part of me still wanted that. Mm-hmm. And it was an either or. Mm-hmm. And that was after, undergrad, law school, starting a firm, being an attorney, and still thinking I'm going to have a choice to make at some point. Mm-hmm. And you're making me more aware of that for myself. So it is very ingrained.
People have asked me, why did I pick Ole Miss? Why did I have to have that? And this is really silly.
Their colors are good.
I watched A Time to Kill. And those were the good guys. And his wife went to Ole Miss. And Sandra Bullock went to Ole Miss. And that's where the people who did things differently went.
Oh, the rule breaker. Well, they are the rule breakers, but also, yeah.
So for me, don't know why, that just became, the palace on the hill that I had to get to see something different, because I knew I was going to end up back where I grew up, which again, it's not a terrible place to be. It's people work very hard to move back to Purvis now. But I just knew I had to seek something different. And this will probably make you cringe, but I sent a letter to get the Ole Miss Law School packet in the mail, like my senior year of high school. And it was such an unattainable pipe dream, but I just needed to cling to any dream that I had.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's kind of what you were saying was, we are taught, or you and I, the people like us, you hitch your wagon to a star. Mm-hmm. And we do. And it gets us where we are going. Mm-hmm. And the hardest part is when you realize you might have hitched it to the wrong star.
Right.
And realizing at that moment, you can keep staying there in a bad place or pick a different star, kind of start over to rebuild something else. And that's a really hard choice to make. Mm-hmm. And can you recall a specific moment when you had a mindset shift of figuring out who you were and where you were in life just weren't fitting?
Mm-hmm. So there was a day that, again, on the surface, everything looked like success. Mm-hmm. I was driving my Mercedes-Benz mom ride that I had gotten, when I was pregnant with my second baby. And I was going to the dry cleaner to pick up uniforms for my husband. And as silly as it was, because I was trying so hard to cling to this role and do what I needed to do, because I thought if I did everything right, I would be happy. Because why wouldn't you be? Lived on a golf course, drove a nice car, sent my kid to a wonderful school, head to toe jamboree outfits. So for a person that grew up not knowing if the power would stay on, this was success.
Right. And it was security.
It was security. And so
supposedly
I was at a red light, and this so ages me, but the Dixie Chicks cover of Landslide came on, and I just broke because I was not living the life that, if it all ended tomorrow, was where I should have been and was happy. And so, it wasn't that I immediately drove home and said, I'm done. There were, it went on a couple more years, and another move and job changes, another baby, because again, God has to wrench the wrong things out of my hands because I'm going to figure out the puzzle and I'm going to fix this. And so it just, again, I was sitting in traffic at a red light. It seems to be where I have my breakthroughs in life.
I think that's a universal mom thing too.
I think so. It's probably the only quiet moment you have. And, because of my very conservative religious background that I'm grateful for, I had always said I was not going to break up my kids' home because, of course, they couldn't have a broken home. And they deserve that. This is what I was sacrificing myself for this, at this altar of them having what they're going to have, what they deserve.
What looked like the perfect family.
Right. And their mom doing the right thing, and their mom being a good mom. And so I just remember hearing myself say, if I have to go to hell so my kids don't have to live in it, I'm okay with that. And so that sounds so morbid. And what a frightening thought to hear somebody say out loud. I would be truly concerned if I heard a friend say that.
I think, though, growing up with religion.
Oh, it's so real.
And very, I don't want to say Old Testament religion, but very
punitive.
And the churches, they get to determine the messaging we receive. Mm-hmm. And until you're old enough to really independently learn about the character of God, if that's the messaging you've received, mm-hmm. and I'm not here to say divorce is right or wrong. I'm not. But in your mind at that time, yes. Your choices were get my children out of what we're living in mm-hmm. and go to hell, mm-hmm. or continue in a childhood for them that isn't healthy.
Right. And so the urgency of that was because I knew, and I said it out loud all the time, they will repeat what they grow up in. This is the model. And if it is parents who are arguing and it is not a relationship that is intrinsically loving and supportive and kind, that's their set point, and that will be their comfort zone. Because I had read all the books and watched all the shows and tried therapy to fix this in myself and to fix the situation. And I intellectually was able to learn before I accepted it emotionally that you are comfortable with what you're used to. And so if it was only going to affect me, I could do it. I've done harder things. It's fine. But when I looked at my children, then it was unthinkable. And it was, you have to do something.
Well, I think the flip side too, though, is what I hear a lot of women say is you knew what you were living in. Mm-hmm. You may not have liked it, but you knew it. Mm-hmm. And the risk then of, I'm about to start something. I have no idea what it's going to be like. Mm-hmm. It's going to be hard. The fear of the unknown, once you do face divorce, mm-hmm. keeps you in with the devil you know, right? And so did you know, or did you assume when you were when you made the decision that I have to get out of this situation, mm-hmm. Did you really know how hard it was going to be, or assume you knew how hard it was going to be?
So I'm probably more fortunate than most in that situation because I had seen people make it on nothing. And so while that was my worst fear, and I was willing to do almost anything to make sure that my children didn't see that, I knew how to do it.
Right. And you knew you had the work ethic.
I know I can work. If, I'm always mentally planning for the worst case scenario. The world ends, I save my emergency savings for the pretend scenario that I'll never work another day in my life. I've always found a job. I will work, and I will work the jobs that are not glamorous. And I have. And that is what I did. And, of course, it hurt me badly that I was counting pennies to be able to pay for their lunches sometimes. And, I bought Chef Boyardee ravioli at Corner Market at one point, as a single mother, only because it was on sale, but it was name brand. And my sitter at the time, who did not have that pattern and just did not understand what it was like not to have, I came home from work and she had.
And this is when you were single momming
yes,
it, right?
Yeah, this is in
making
the
every dollar
the trenches.
stretch.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I came home and she had opened all 3 cans I bought, dumped them out and not scraped them. So like half of the food was still in the cans. And then also left the leftovers in the pot for hours. So all of it was wasted and my children had nibbled on it, which to me at the time and kind of still was just an unthinkable waste. And I mourned 75-cent ravioli. But it was a survivable situation for me because I knew I had survived it before and I knew I'd worked my way out of it.
Well, I've gotten some questions since the podcast has released about some single moms saying, I want to know what they did and how they got by. Mm-hmm. Tell me what did the days look like? How did you, just by the grace of God and the skin of your teeth, do it all back then?
So I'm not sure I could now. Looking back on it, I don't know how I did it other than just, you'll do what you have to do to survive. So when it was, the first day of it being, this is done, I am now on my own, I had $300 in the bank and a mortgage and a car note, utilities, all of the bills. And so mathematically, I didn't know how that was going to work out. But I worked at a wonderful insurance agency in Richmond. So I never missed a day of work. I found a low-cost babysitter who I'm still friends with to this day in New Augusta because, of course, I made all the phone calls, asked everybody I could, who can I trust? I can't afford daycare, I know that. Who can I trust with my children?
Keep my kids alive.
Mm-hmm. Who's a good driver? Because you
right.
work at the insurance agency,
right.
You hear about all the bad things. So, there was literally one, and what an angel. And her friend across the street would help at times too. And they were stay-at-home moms. And so, we would get in my little Volkswagen Passat that I got after the divorce when I just needed to trade that expensive SUV in for the cheapest car, that would work most of the time to get us where we needed to be. And so we would wake up early in the morning, get ready. I would drive from Petal to New Augusta, actually Arlington.
So for people who are listening aren't locally, about how far was that?
So my entire circuit on a slow morning was an hour.
To get kids
probably
where you
more
needed
of
to
an
go
hour and a half.
And back to work.
Mm-hmm. To get to a safe and affordable babysitter, a good preschool program for my oldest, and then a job that I had. And so thank God for that job. And Janet Wiseman, we are still friends to this day. She is an angel on earth. And so she is probably one of the hardest workers I've ever met. am one of the kindest people and will give you a reality check so quick. And that woman picked me up so many times and told me to get back to work, which was exactly what I needed to hear. And so, we would all pay her $20 a week. Wow. And she would cook lunches for us. And so her husband, they lived in Cuba and Italy, so the meals she would cook, I know they cost more than $20, but I would have those lunches at work every day. And then for a few years, whatever leftovers we had from the office, I would take home and the kids would eat at night.
You forced yourself to find community. You asked for help when you needed it.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think that's giving me too much credit to say I asked. I think I just...
You found the people who forced it on you?
Yes. Yeah, and that's what I needed. Mm-hmm. So, when I tell you it was essentials only. Yeah. And so, I'm good at math. I know when there's more month than money. And so, I got the opportunity to clean at night. And so, then that became the hour-long commute in the morning to get kids where they needed to be, to write insurance all day, then the hour back from Richton to Petal, and then an extra half hour onto that to get my children to Purvis where my parents lived.
So that you could work at night.
Right. Because the number one priority was, of course, I have to make enough money to live. I also have to keep my kid in safe situations at my price point. So, I did the math of, is the gas going to work out for the wage of, dropping the kids off at Purvis? It did. It was physically very hard. And I remember being the cleaning lady at night and being spoken to at times like the cleaning lady in these offices, medical clinics, the jail, of course, up front, the admin areas, and how invisible I was. And it's true. The people you come across, you don't know who they are and what their life is. Because the same person who might look through me with a mop in my hand at 9 o'clock at night may have to call me tomorrow to ensure they're home. And I can do both. And I'm going to do my best to do them both very well. And so that would last until, probably 11 o'clock at night. And then for me to drive back to Purvis. And, the sleeping arrangement was an air mattress on the floor in my parents' den. And the kids thought that was fun. They still think that's camping.
Because you made it fun. You did that. Yeah. They're not going to look back and say, these were the hardest years of my life. Mm-hmm. They're going to say, Mom, do you remember those nights when we used to go over there and have slumber parties in the middle of the room on the air mattress? Mm-hmm. And you're going to think,
I do. I'll never forget it.
Yeah, I was starving.
Yeah, I was tired. My bones hurt.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was, and then we would be up at 5 a.m. to go back to Richton and do it all over again. And then when that wasn't enough, I got out my camera and had the audacity to charge people for pictures. And took my parents', Dell computer from when I was in high school, which had been many years at that point, and edited them all, which of course took forever. So I had a full-time day job, a night job, and then a weekend gig. And then somehow edited photos between that. So that was always my prayer and my hope that the kids would not look back at that as how awful and what a misfortune we experienced, but instead that my mom did everything she could, and she's the hardest worker I know, and she kept us afloat. And my priority at that time, And I don't think it would have mattered to me as much if I had not seen the other side of it, was I don't want to move my kids around.
They're going to know what home is.
Yeah. We had a 900 square foot house in Petal that I only lived in because it was a good school district and that was the house I could afford in it. And maybe it wasn't the right choice to work that much to make sure that they stayed at the same house. But at the time, that was the most important thing for me.
But you picked that. And it's kind of like I'm sorry to cut you off. But I'm going to keep talking. You had to pick your goal.
Yeah.
So it was Ole Miss, and that got you to college. It was figuring out what your priorities are, because otherwise there's no goalpost.
Right.
And so the stability for them, the school district for them, so not moving them either from house to house, from, school to school, that was your guiding light. And I don't know that, you could look back and say, was this a mistake? No. Are you kidding me?
Well, and I think no one chooses a hard time. Like, if you had your choice, of course, I want no worries and for everything to work out and for it to be easy.
Theoretically, but you did.
What do you mean?
You did choose hard.
I did.
You couldn't have named it. You didn't pick the hard times, and you wouldn't have preferred it. But you did. And I don't know. And I think what my point in that is, I deal with women all the time who say, I'm afraid. I'm too afraid to leave. I don't know what this will look like, and I know it will be a struggle. But there are two ways to see that. You can make a decision from a place of fear, or you can make a decision from a place of strength. Fear keeps you where you are. Strength chooses the fear. Strength says, this is going to suck and I'm embracing it. Right. And that's what you did.
Right.
And I just want women to hear that you can have control. You just may have to choose the harder path and not know what it looks like, but have the sense of peace of knowing that you have control over the environment your children are growing up in at that point.
Well, and the upside to being in situations like that is your priorities come into laser focus.
Yep.
And so for me, it was, and there were all these I spent so much time in my car that there are just these songs and these YouTube videos that are just ingrained in me. But there was, a song, Wolf at the Door. And so, the analogy of the wolf is at the door and my babies are behind me. And so knowing that you have to do whatever it takes, you then become able to do whatever it takes.
Yeah. And you did. Did you ever think you would get to the other side? Like, were there moments where it's like, I'm spinning this hamster wheel as fast as I can and I'm making no traction?
For years, of course, for years. And, it took me until the past few years to get into the professional field that I am in now and that I love and is the perfect thing for me to use my education and my experience to help people. It is a true vocation from God. And I remember I just kept working because I knew that I wasn't where I needed to be and where I should be. I had the educations, I had the brains, I had the work ethic, that this couldn't be my life. I knew I wasn't going to be juggling 3 jobs forever.
Right.
Pushing a broom, scrubbing other people's toilets.
Yep.
That was a temporary solution for me. And so I lived in a way and managed my own money in a way that only had to be a temporary solution. I did not relax into that being, this is my life now.
Right. You didn't get comfortable with the discomfort.
I did not. It was very uncomfortable the entire time.
So knowing that you're a goal-oriented person and an organized person, did you write down goals? Did you
Absolutely.
have Like, did you have a plan?
Mm-hmm.
And what was that plan?
Yeah. And I sent you a picture of it when we were talking about doing this podcast. Because it's like so nerdy now to even think about it. And, you know, literally I wrote down my 5-year plan. I had my passion planner, and it was, you know, what's your lifetime goal, your 3 to 6 months, 1 year, 5 year. And so, you know, I am who I am because it was, I want a 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, 2-bath home in Petal, because we had a 2-1. And so a 3-2 sounded amazing.
Yeah.
And I want an 800 credit score, because I knew intellectually that was, you know, where you saved on your interest. And, you know, it is expensive to be poor. And I think a lot of people don't understand that. I wanted a certain amount of savings. I wanted to be in a church I was comfortable with. The goals were so modest.
But they were specific.
They were specific.
When you say I wanted a certain amount, you knew the amount.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, and I drive a 2019 Toyota Camry right now. Not because that's the most car I can swing, but because working at an insurance agency, I learned that if your child's 16, a 10-year-old car is much cheaper to insure. The rules may have changed. I haven't worked in that industry for years. But I heard it, and it was, okay, that's a plan. That's a number. I can do that. And so I ran the calculation of when my oldest is 16, what is the newest model year I can buy to be the cheapest to insure? And so I will drive that car until she's 16 now. So I'm fortunate that I have that personality, that when I figure out the metric that I need to meet, hell or high water, I'm going to get there, even if it's not a requirement.
But truthfully, I'm not going to say everyone has access to it, but we all do have access now to more information. Mm-hmm. But I love how God put you in these places at the lowest points of your life to give you the knowledge and information to continue to build on that. I mean, you know this only because of that season.
Right.
And that sense of security that you were taught to attain, you learned how to attain it yourself, not dependent on someone else. And you controlled the controllables. So there are 1,000 things we can't control. But you controlled the things you could. And so you took the reins back.
Well, and, you know, I think what I did right and what I continue to try to do right is learning with the tools you have available to you at the time.
Right.
So my eyes and ears were always open. And, you know, don't take money advice from broke people. Don't take relationship advice from someone who, you know, has multiple girlfriends at once. Take advice from the people who are where you want to be.
Yep.
And so I think having the humility to put myself in environments where I was the lowest man on the totem pole, and maybe I was invisible to the successful people in that environment, I was always listening and learning what worked. And I have a speech that's, you know, famous Barack Obama. And I share it with people all the time because, you know, he said, don't ever let people make you feel like you don't belong. Because, you know, he sat at fancy dinners with the heads of state and all of the most important people in the world. And what he learned and shared was that they're just people. And again, they may not be the smartest. They may not be the most deserving or hardworking. But they are there for a reason. And so if you can learn the patterns of what works to get you where you need to be open to that education and look at it in your life and say, how can I apply that to get where I need to be?
Do you think that there's any chance you could have gotten to where you are through luck?
Yeah. You know, that's my internal monologue for sure. And so,
like your brain tends to say, all these pieces just fell into place and minimized the work you did to get there.
Absolutely.
But looking back, I mean, if you're talking to someone else who's where you were 10 years ago, is hope or luck a plan?
Yeah. So to me, that's always the case. I've just gotten lucky. I've just had wonderful people in my path who took a chance on me. And of course, if you take a chance on me and give me an opportunity, I'm going to work myself to death to make you happy. But it always stands out to me the moments where people who I respect and feel like I need to tell them I'm just lucky to be here have stopped and looked at me and said, Sarah, that's not true. So all of the way back to Janet Wiseman in the kitchen of State Farm when I said, who will want me?
And that's so ingrained in all of us. Mm-hmm. Who would want me?
Right. Like, I'm a disaster. I'm divorced with 2 babies. My children were 3 and 1. That's a hot mess. And she took me by the shoulders and she said, anyone would want you. And so that moment will never leave me. And it took me a long time to believe that and for me to then accept good things about myself later. But even as recently as last week, having lunch with a mentor who gave me opportunities that put me in a position that I can be where I am now, and someone that I respect so much. We were having lunch, and I made another joke about, I was a sales rep a few years ago. This is crazy. I don't know why anybody asked my advice. And so he stopped and he looked at me and he said, Sarah, you're good at what you do. You're really good at your job. And so as much as it is not my programming to believe that about myself, and I tell everybody, I'm just happy to be here. Like, I show up every day and I can't believe how lucky I've gotten. And the assignment to me is to continue to work hard, to continue to deserve to be here every single day. But I'm so grateful for the moments that people I respect stop and look at me and say, you earned this.
What if you're talking to, let's say 10 years ago you, mm-hmm. What would you tell her? The one who's sitting in the car, Landslide is playing, and she's crying. Mm-hmm. What would you tell her?
The things that you struggle with about yourself are what keep you alive. You're going to be okay because of the things in you that you've tried to snuff out. That willingness to work twice as hard to get what you want when it would be so much easier just to go with the flow and be happy with what you have.
So kind of like the things that the world says are too much, mm-hmm. those are your survival skills.
Right. That's your North Star.
And that you have what you need. Mm-hmm. Because it's kind of like you need the money, you need the time, you need all these other things. You don't. You have what you need.
Right. Right. And so, that's one thing with my daughters now, because I have 2 girls. And so I try to not extinguish the flame of what makes them different.
Right.
Don't fit in. I don't care if you fit in or not.
Right. Please don't fit in.
My 9-year-old is teaching herself Japanese on Duolingo and is obsessed with every anime show. And that has caused some issues for her at school. She's a nerd, and she doesn't pick up on the social cue of the cool kids and ends up the butt of jokes. But that is her unique strength. Mm-hmm. And the biggest disservice I could have been for myself was to fit the mold. And so don't fit the mold. what makes you different is God-given.
Yep.
And that's what you lean into.
I was just going to say lean into. What about, so to the other people who are where you were and they are without financial support, they're struggling, they don't know how they're going to get by, they are questioning their self-worth because is anyone going to love them? Are they ever going to be able to be financially stable? All those things. Mm-hmm. What's the practical advice? I mean, not just the believe in yourself and you, but what is the practical, those steps you would say, like pen to paper things that you would advise them to do?
So it truly is one foot in front of the other. And I am an impatient person. I want results now. I see where I want to be, and I'm dissatisfied that I'm not there every step of the way. It's always too slow.
And why is it not done yet?
Right. It's always too slow for me. I'm never accomplishing enough quick enough. However, it felt impossible every step of the way. Mm-hmm. But then you turn around and you've gotten where you wanted to go. So, the first objective was I need to make this house snow. I need to keep the lights on. So when you're in that place, it gets so granular. And where I have seen people, I don't want to say fail, but not succeed, is not believing that it's possible. So
especially if you only grew up with it. Like if that's all you were around.
Right.
Yeah, and no one said it was possible.
Right. Nothing is unsavable. There are no unsolvable problems except for death. That's it. And if God has something for you, he has factored in your stupidity. So you cannot mess it up. You can delay it. So for me, it was, let me figure out what is the most basic thing I need to do. Mm-hmm. In Maslow's hierarchy of need, learned it in Psychology 101 and never forgot it. Maybe I can't get my kid in all the dance classes right now. I have to provide for their physical safety. That's the only thing I'm focused on. Okay? They're physically safe. Now I have to keep the roof over our head. So it is just, sometimes you can't do the things you want to do.
Yeah.
And that's hard. So wherever you are in life and whatever your particular circumstances are, you just have to really be able to audit and assess, what are my needs? What is my matter of survival? Focus on that. And for me at the time, it was make every house note on time, meet every other financial obligation I have to make. Because I wanted a certain credit score. So as much as it sounds like rote, uninteresting advice, writing down where you are now and where you want to be, you fill in the steps there. And so that was my nerdy goal. Other people may not care about that, and that's fine. But wherever you see yourself, it doesn't just happen on accident. And no matter how small the step is to get there, just keep making the steps.
Right. Any forward motion is one little bit closer.
Mm-hmm. And again, it's a cliche, but if you find yourself in a hole, step one is to stop digging.
Yep. Amen.
Yeah.
Okay. So has there been any mantra, quote, affirmations that you have just clung to that have pushed you, kept you going? Like when you cannot think clearly, that's the one thought you can focus on?
Absolutely. And I mean, you've heard me say half of them, but I have a YouTube playlist because free advice was all the advice I could afford for a long time. Mm-hmm. And so I think because I did not have the pattern of just intrinsic positive self-talk, and I was in my car so much during that time, that I just thankfully the algorithm served me. You know, we started with Lauren Daigle and Rescue. It's just white knuckling my wheel and singing every single lyric of that song. That mattered to me so much. And then I discovered Lisa Nichols, who is a motivational speaker and accountant who had to overcome some financial struggles herself. And she had this memory of not being able to afford diapers for her baby and telling him, your mother will never be this broke or broken again. There is a famous Will Smith quote, as silly as that sounds, of, you will not outwork me. So it was finding just motivation of, again, I say it jokingly, but people who have just been through things and are just too mean to kill and too stubborn. And so I think if I had leaned into poor, pitiful me, sad songs, I probably would have just laid down and died. And, you know, that's another one is, it was, and I don't know where I heard it, but my mantra in my own mind was just, you cannot lay down and die.
Yeah.
You have to stay up and get back up.
The law of physics, a body in motion stays in motion.
Right.
And I think that all the time.
Yeah. If you get knocked down 8 times, get up 9. And so my husband now, who is my best friend and fabulous, he's, you know, I pick on him and call him the gym bro. And so it's probably entertaining for him that somehow that's my algorithm on YouTube, is it's fitness motivation, which I'm not, you know, in the gym lifting heavy. But how they talk about being able to, you know, lift a weight, whatever. For me, that is so translatable to how I need to move in the world, to be responsible for my children, to help people professionally as they come across my path, and to live up to my responsibilities that I have been blessed with. And then those get heavy too, right? Mm-hmm. Like even when you get to the place of success you could not have imagined, once you know how fortunate you are to have them, to have the things that you've prayed for, it's heavy.
Yeah. A lot of responsibility at that point.
Yeah. You and I have talked about this before. The phone rings nonstop. Yeah. And at least once a day, I look around at my desk and think, I wish somebody would bring me an easy problem. Like they're all complicated.
Remember those days
problems
when I was just driving my stuff to the dry cleaners? And,
right.
Yeah.
Like if somebody could just like call me up and ask me a really easy question, I could use an easy win right now. But their struggles are so safe with me because I have been there, as much as it may not seem like it. I believe in you. If I give you the steps you need to do to get whatever your particular goal is, I'm cheering you the whole way from somebody who has been there.
I think it's really important you chose your input. Mm-hmm. You chose what you were going to, you chose the people who were going to be around you, and they were going to be life-speaking, positive, encouraging people. Mm-hmm. You cannot move forward successfully with negative people around you. Right. So you chose your people, you chose your music with that same thing in mind. You chose what you were going to listen to build you up. And it sounds to me like then now you take that professionally and you look at people and say, I believe in you. Mm-hmm. I just need you to believe in you. Yeah. And if we can both do that, we can make some magic happen, right?
And we're going to have a good laugh at the end about how you thought this was never going to happen. Right. Isn't that funny? Because I got to do that, and now I've gotten to do that with many people.
And I've gotten to show you what's possible and how nice that is for you then to pay that forward to other people. So what would you tell the people, those of us who, I won't say have made it, by no means, because there's always a new struggle, but if we're on the outside looking into someone who is at that point where you were 10 years ago, I'm never going to make it out of this hole. I've stopped digging, hopefully, but how am I ever going to climb out? What can the rest of us do to support those people? What can we do that you wish you had or that you did have that got you by?
some reality checking I was fortunate to have of when somebody is just down on themselves and giving in. It's okay sometimes to say, don't you lay down and die. Get up. People need that. However, what you don't do is continue to beat them down.
Sure.
Speak life into people. Share your story. And it's scary for me to share my story now because I have people who are close friends who know me as I am now. And it's like a bummer to me, I don't want to tell people, I was crying over ravioli 10 years ago. That's a bummer of a story. Nobody likes that. But if you're in the position where you need help, being humble enough to ask for it, because I can't tell you how many people I've come across in my life where they needed help. They weren't going to ask for it. And they knew the right way to do it, and you couldn't tell them nothing, is what
they wouldn't
say,
even accept
right?
the help, right?
That's right.
Yep.
So step one, be willing to accept help. And certainly for me, that was not anybody writing me a check or fixing all my problems, but it was advice from people who had lived and experienced things and had what I knew I needed. So clarify your goals, make them actionable and attainable. Give yourself a timeline, and then look around for people who are there and ask them, how did you get there? Here's where I'm at. And then listen.
Yep.
Right? Which sounds like very easy advice. It's not. Be willing. The only reason I was able to work jobs were met and I got to where we needed to be was because as much as sometimes it's embarrassing to feel like you're publicly taking a step back, if it's for the reason, the right reason, and it is temporary, and you're not just going to lay down and stay there, that's okay. And as much as my fear may tell me that that's embarrassing for people to know now, not once that I know of has someone lost respect for me after that.
No. And I think you'll get a lot of response from this. That there probably were way more moms crying over ravioli than you realized.
Right.
When you get the name brand cereal and the kids leave it in the milk. I mean, I think you will find that that's more relatable, and hopefully that that you will help others, but also be more empowered to share more. And thank you for sharing that, not just the struggle, but the overcoming and the tidbits of how others who are where you were can see a bright future and make some actionable steps to get there. And I hope in the future we can have you back and talk more about the nuts and bolts. Like you said, you're a numbers person and a planner. And I think that in the future we can talk more about really what that looks like for people who are in that situation, who not just need the motivation, but need that practical advice. So I hope you'll come back again in the future.
I will. There are bright days ahead, and we're going to talk about good news and good things. But just stick in it. Whatever you're in, keep going. It's not lost.
Keep swimming.
Until you've given up, there's hope.
That's right. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you to our sponsor, Porter Law Group, for supporting these conversations. When family is on the line, experience matters. Porter Law Group specializes in custody and family law with compassion at every step. Visit porterlaw.ms now to schedule your consultation to protect what matters most.